Hello and welcome to another knitting pod. I am Lena. Thank you for being here today. I hope you are doing well wherever you are in the world. Let's jump right into knitting, shall we? Today I have a couple of smaller projects to chit chat with you guys about. I have a finished pair of socks. Let's start with the socks. These are just another one of my attempts at a plain sock that I've been trying to master building a sock that really works for me. This is the Socksploration, something like that. Socksploration sock by Earth Tones Girl. My friend Caitlin sent me this pattern as she heard me talking about it a couple of months ago. And it really did change my life. It is my sock recipe, specifically the heel. It's the Shadow Wrap heel, and I just really love it. This particular sock took me forever to finish. I don't know why. It just languished in the car forever, and I kind of got stuck just right before the toe and because I hadn't tried it on. Anyway, I finally set myself the goal this month to finish this pair of socks. I also think my problem with finishing these was that this is so not my color. I bought this yarn ages ago in an attempt to make my husband a pair of socks. I was going to make I think the DRK Everyday sock, which is a toe up ribbed sock that had all these problems with the toe up. This was years ago. So I was a baby knitter and it just was over my head. So I abandoned it. But this sock yarn was languishing in my stash, languishing because, again, this is just not my color. If you guys have watched me for any amount of time, you're like, why would you ever buy that color? This was meant to be a contrast in a sock I was making for my husband. It's just, to me, a very uninspiring colorway. It's it's a dull green. The speckles aren't exciting. But it has cashmere in it. So in an effort to use yarn that I had and in an effort to make a very cozy sock while I was still trying to practice my own sock making to fit my own feet, I decided to use this yarn. So I think it didn't move fast because I'm very color driven. If I don't like the color, it's going to be very hard for me to want to pick that project up. So I am really happy with the way they finished. I did it with like a 000 needle because I'm a loose knitter. And while I was making it, it was so tight. It's so funny. Like every time I would try it on, it was just like pulling it up like over the heel was really difficult. I also have a very skinny foot, very skinny calves and ankles. So I was really hopeful that it would stay really tight. I like a tight fit. But of course, once I blocked them and wore them in real life, they stretched out so much, especially this top ribbing. Somehow the ribbing never stays super tight, and these socks have gone from really fitted to just a very comfortable fit. I mean, they really are. This is probably just the tightest a hand knit sock is going to be. Like a hand knit sock is not going to have the same fit or kind of memory as a store-bought sock that has a lot of Lycra or something like that. Like, do y'all know the brand Vuori? I mean, if you don't, you should get yourself to the Vuori shop or website ASAP. But Vuori is just like an athleisure brand. And my husband but my husband specifically loves Vuori. So he's always buying Vuori and getting gifted Vuori by people that know him and returning and this and that. And often there's been like this, oh, well, we have 10 extra dollars. Do you want to grab some socks? So I will grab their socks, their crew length socks, and they are so fantastic. This is an expensive sock. It's 20 something dollars probably, which to me is just cringe. Like I will spend money on like the joggers, but I ended up with these socks. They are fantastic. A hand knit sock is never going to have that much. At least I don't know how to make that. If you know how to make a sock like a Vuori level sock, please tell me, because I don't know that there's a yarn, because the yarn, like sock yarn, has like nylon in order to make them not get holes and stuff, but that stretchiness I just have not found in a sock. Maybe the DRK everyday sock is something I should try because it is a fully ribbed sock. But I honestly wonder if that'll make it even less fitted because it is so stretchy and then it kind of just stretches out. I don't know. I don't have enough sock knitting experience. So if you do, please let me know what you think. All that to say, I really like these socks. I still find the color uninspiring. I still don't pick them up to wear them as often. And I also made another discovery. Okay, here's my discovery. And this is why you have to just get comfortable as a knitter with whatever you're making, hats, sweaters, cardigans, socks, gloves, anything. There's going to be, even shawls, there's going to be experimentation, and it might take a long time for you to figure something out. I made these socks. These are the first socks I ever made. I don't remember what year it was, but these are Stephen West painting brick socks. Now, I am obsessed. There's dog hair stuck in these. I am obsessed with Stephen West everything, but in particular, the painting bricks, the painting honeycombs, all the painting. Give me all the painting because, again, I love color. Now, look, I haven't shown you this sock in a long time. Come on, how fantastic is this sock? I mean, it's just, it makes me so inordinately happy, this sock. It's, the base color makes me so happy, and then the pops of color, it's just next level. What I wanted to point out about this sock, it was my first sock, so it is absolutely more of a slipper fit than a sock fit, and I actually love that. I wear these all the time. But what I specifically wanted to talk about is the folded over cuff. Now, when I was making it, it seemed like a huge pain and it seemed kind of pointless. And even after it was done, I didn't appreciate it because it's just the only knit sock I had ever worn. Once I started my journey to try to make a basic vanilla sock, and every basic vanilla sock that I have seen has just a regular cuff. It is not folded over. And the more I wear these and these, the more I realize how much I like a folded over cuff. There's something about it that's so sturdy in the fact that this part is double. This is not just a raw edge. It just feels so nice and sturdy and just gives it a little more, I don't know, gives me a little more volume there in my calf. And I just really like that fit. Now, you might be the opposite. You might feel like it's too much. I don't need that double layer there. But for me personally, it just feels really nice. And from now on, I feel like it's going to be worth it for me to do that extra ribbing folded over, do that extra step of closing that seam and all that. I think it's just really worth it. And in the future, I'm going to take that extra step. So again, the whole journey of the sock for me has been like a little microcosm of knitting in general, where the joy is in that experimentation and in that figuring out what really works for you. And also a big part of my journey right now, my knitting journey in general, is being very mindful of not just chasing FOs. I think there have been times in my knitting life where it's just like trying to finish. And like some people are really fast knitters. Some people have a lot going on outside of their knitting life and don't have as much time. And the more, it's kind of ironic, the busier I get outside of my knitting life, the more I'm trying to slow down my knitting life because I'm not going to have a bunch more FOs and I don't need them. I just want to enjoy the journey. I want to enjoy the very rare 30 minutes to an hour I knit anymore, because I want to just feel the experience of knitting, because it's so restorative for me. It's so personal. It's like it's a form of recovering from the rest of my life that's just about me. It's not going out to dinner with my family. It's not catching up with a friend. It's just about me, and I want to slow it down and be aware and conscious that I'm making pieces that they'll really suit me, even if they take longer or if it's slower or more conscious. Do you know what I mean? Just bringing that slow consciousness to everything I'm making knitting wise is just, it's like a real place I'm leaning into in my knitting life this year. So yeah, these are the socks that finally got finished. They got the ends woven in, they got blocked. What's funny about them, because I made them over such a long period of time, and when I started the second one, I didn't have the first one with me. So like the cuffs absolutely do not match. The length barely matches, but I could care less. I make them to build my skills and have a small project on the go. So I was really happy to get those off the needle, because I really wanted a new small project on the go. My daughter's in volleyball season, my son's in basketball season, so there's a lot of on the go knitting. And I literally last weekend did not have a small project, so I took my enormous rain or shine blanket and sat there like a fool in the stands with a giant blanket on my lap. It was kind of hilarious. Like even the coaches were commenting on it. I'm always just the random person in the stands knitting. And complete side note, I'm always astonished when somebody, usually a grandmother, will be like, "Oh, I love to knit. It's so nice to see you knitting." And then they sit there for hours on their phone, and no judgment, even though, if I'm being honest, it's a little bit of judgment. Like, why did you not bring your knitting if you love knitting? You're not watching, you're not staying present, you're just scrolling on your phone. It makes no sense to me, but I don't say these things because that is probably a bridge too far from a stranger. But I'm always wondering, like, if you love it, it's not like sewing where you'd have to bring your sewing machine. Like, that's the best thing about knitting. You could literally be on top of a mountain and knit. Anyway, okay, so that was the green boring socks. Now, an epic fail that is a bummer, because I neither enjoyed the knitting process nor am I happy. I'm so unhappy with the finished product that it will be ripped out. I only didn't start ripping it out because I wanted to show you first. I'll just show you the whole thing. It's so ugly because it's not blocked, because I'm not going to bother. This is my Musselburgh hat. Now, you're like, that's an odd looking Musselburgh hat. If you don't know, this is a pattern from Isolde Teagues, something like that. It is a top-down pattern. It's supposed to be this gaugeless hat where you get some knitting, then you measure, and then it tells you when to stop increasing. And then you make a double-sided hat. Basically, you increase, you go straight, then you go straight, and then you decrease. So then it's a double layered hat. And it's supposed to be, any yarn, any weight, you get the point. I had bought this yarn because of Summer Lee. I saw her use this yarn in some socks and I just loved it. It is toasted coconut and mint or something like that in Lang Jewel yarn, sock yarn, the cute little baby yarn balls. I just loved this color, and at the time it was Thanksgiving and I was trying to figure out travel knitting, and I just felt like making a hat. So I started this and quickly realized I really did not enjoy it, because the gauge was so tight. So it was such slow going. And then independent of this color is very boring. It's just this flat, taupey gray. Like in this hat, if I were using like a really funky speckled hedgehog fibers yarn, I think maybe it would have been more fun. But just round and round in this color was just brutal, completely lacking in entertainment. It was like knitting without anything good about knitting. Tiny needles, and it was just horrible. To the point where I was like, I am not making this full hat. I'm just going to throw some ribbing on the bottom and call it good. So that's what I did. And then once I ran out of the toasted coconut, this was just designed to fail. I switched to this. Now I'm going to show you real quick. I'm not putting it on my head. That is not happening. But it was going to look like this. You weren't going to see the ribbing of in the toasted coconut because it would fold over. It's kind of hard to hold up, but that's what it was going to look like. I like the color combo. It's all fine, but it is just ridiculously big for me. It is big, and that's fine, but the way that the stockinette fits, so I've never made, well, no, that's not true. This is actually a stockinette hat. This is the Positivity Beanie by Tori Yu, I believe. I can't remember. I think it's bottom up, and then this is all in stockinette. But it fits really well. This thing was like blousy, and it made me look like I had some weird alien head. It just is unacceptable. It's so bad. I clearly made too many increases. Whatever. I'm going to rip it out. I can't stand it, and I do not want to waste this yarn because I love these colors together, and I really want to make a sock. So I'm going to just rip it out, not give it a second thought, and eventually someday make socks. Now, one thing I am worried about is the yarn is going to be crimped like so tight because it's been knit into this really tight gauge. And I know I should go through all the motions of making it into a skein and then wet blocking it to get that. That just sounds like so much work, y'all. Please tell me what you would do. I don't know. Like I in the past, when I've ripped things out and they're crimped, I just wind it into a ball and it's fine. I've made things into different things and it's never been an issue. But just because this is sock yarn and it's so tightly knit up, I feel like it's especially going to be problematic. So I do feel like I need to allow the yarn to, lose its memory of the stitches and reset before I reknit it. So any thoughts about that and your personal experience would be very helpful. So this was an epic fail. I was really, really unhappy about it. It just felt like a waste of effort because I didn't get joy out of it in the moment. Do you know what I mean? If it had been like, oh, I loved the process, but the end result wasn't that great, that's one thing. It was just, I didn't like any part of this. I need to rip that out. Okay, I do have one. Well, while we're talking about fails, let's talk about one more fail because I have gotten some questions about this project like, hello, where did it go? And speaking of comments, I'm really sorry I have not responded to comments. I have been barely keeping my head above water. Like anytime I visualize what my life feels like right now, it's like a drowning person where all you can see is their mouth and their nose, like peeking above the waterline. That's how I feel. I feel like I am barely keeping my life together without cutting things out. And responding to comments has temporarily been cut out, but not because I don't want to respond, just because I literally fall asleep thinking, oh, I didn't respond to comments today. So anyway, let's talk about this sad ranunculus. It just like holding it makes me sad. Like I feel droopy. I had such high hopes for this. I wanted to wear this to my family's Thanksgiving dinner. It is the end of January. That is how this went. Now, there is a risk in ever loving a finished object and then loving it so much that you want to make the same thing again. So I know a lot of people have made multiple ranunculuses. But I do think, from what I've gathered from y'all, that you make them in different yarns. So say you made one in fingering weight, the next one you made was in worsted weight or something like that. This, I had originally made mine in Pearl Soho linen quilt, and I loved it so much that I decided to make it in another rustic feeling fingering weight yarn, which is this, not taking into account that despite the same person knitting it in the same weight, the same technical weight, even the small differences in yarn makeup. For instance, the linen quill is linen, alpaca, and wool. And this is Ritual Dyes Maven Base, which is 100%, I think 100% Rambouillet. This just tells you how different fiber performs so differently. This just wears completely differently than the one I made out of linen quill. The one I made out of linen quill just has this drapiness that I just didn't think 15% alpaca would contribute so much, but I guess it did. This is 100% wool, and it's just, I don't like the way it fits. I've blocked it. I've wet blocked it because I know that's what you're thinking. I've wet blocked it several times. I wet blocked the body and I wet blocked the sleeves. And 2 wet blocks have done nothing to make me feel like it fits my body better. It just has that boxy, unflattering look that I just don't like. So I'm at that point where I'm having to confront the fact that I put so much effort into this. I bought another ball of yarn to make this entire thing and rip it out when I have very little knitting time in my life as it is. This is why you haven't seen it or heard me talk about it, because it just makes me feel like deflated. I hate ripping stuff out. This is such a pain. And then you have to re-deal with the yarn like we were just talking about. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I really don't know what I'm going to do right now. It's just languishing. Part of me thinks like if it were shorter and more cropped, would it be more flattering? I guess I might as well try to do that, but I haven't had the bandwidth. I love this color so much. I want it to be a staple. That's what I thought I was making, and it's just not what I'm making. I don't know. I also don't want to buy more of this yarn to make it into something else because it's such an expensive yarn. It's absurdly expensive. I can't remember, but I want to say it's like $30 for a 50-gram ball when linen quill is on sale $11 and change for a 100-gram ball. It just doesn't make any sense. So the bottom line is I don't know what I'm going to do, and I don't anticipate having the mental bandwidth to figure that out anytime soon. Let's transition to a happier note that sorry, I want to cough. That went down the wrong pipe. This is making me so happy. So let's end our knitting on a really happy note. Sorry. Last week, I showed you some new patterns that I really want to make combined with yarn that's in my stash. And I had a realization this week. This was one of the yarns I had in my stash that I showed you last week. This is Bad Egg, the colorway Bad Egg. It is Spin Cycle dyed in the wool. So it's a sport weight, I say more fingering weight, but potato. It is a dream, this yarn. I have had it in my stash for so long, and I had this realization that I am being so precious about this yarn because I love it so much, and I know knitting it will make me so happy. Counterintuitively, it's keeping me from knitting it. Tell me if you guys relate to this. Like, I love it so much that I don't want to knit with it. Like I had a friend when we lived in Houston who loved New Order so much, the band New Order, that she had never listened to their last album because she didn't want to use up that experience. She wanted to still have that experience in her future rather than her past. Like, you know, that feeling of like, this book is so good, I'm jealous that you haven't read it yet. I have that all the time. Like, the book Covenant of Water was one of those books where I was like, if you haven't read it, I'm so jealous because I will never go on that journey for the first time again. That's how I was treating this. And I realized it was ridiculous. I am reading this book right now called 4,000 Weeks. I think the author's name is Oliver Burkeman. It's just about how we're so misled in the modern world about time and how to use it. We think if we can just work harder, we can cram everything into our lives and we never actually have to choose what to spend our precious time on. That if we can just, block out our time and be organized and prune everything into like perfectly efficient chunks, we'll never have to choose. This book is about time in this broad kind of philosophical sense. And I love this book so much. I read it in very small chunks because I'm reading at night. And I love it because it reminds me that my life is actually happening right now and to use my time in the way, like, don't wait, don't save, like, just don't save the things that are precious, just use them now. That's how, and that realization was like, I have wanted a neon yellow beanie forever. I don't know why, but I do. And I wasn't making it because I didn't want to use this yarn. I felt like it wasn't as good enough use of the yarn. Like a hat wasn't as like a good use of this very precious yarn. Why? If you want it, why don't you make it? It is absurd. It's counterintuitive. I don't understand that. Well, I do understand that instinct, but I don't want to do that anymore. So this week when I had that realization, I think when I finally cast off that hat, the failed hat, and tried it on, I was like, oh, I love hats, you guys. I absolutely love a good hand knit hat so, so, so much. In fact, I probably wear my precious hand knit hats way more than I wear like sweaters that I like. So it technically is a great use of this yarn because I wear it more, right? So anyway, let me show you this tiny baby. I'm gonna turn it inside out because I actually think the wrong side looks a lot nicer. This is the Robin beanie. I've told you guys a million times how much I love this beanie. Sari Nordland's Robin beanie. You know, it's interesting that this is looking different in person as it is on the screen. It looks a lot warmer on the screen, and in real life, I feel like it's a cooler tone of yellow. It might have to do with my ring light. I wonder if I change yeah, here, now it's cooler. Maybe that looks cooler to you. Anyway, the Robin beanie is similar to the Musselburgh in that you start from the top and you increase and then you do a straight part and then it folds over. It does not double-sided like the Musselburgh. This is my favorite hat I've ever made. I made it in a strand of sock yarn held together with a strand of mohair in that pink hat I've worn before many times because it's my favorite hat of all time. I love the mohair sock yarn combo so much. This is just the Spin Cycle held single, and I'm just going to be really mindful of making the increases until it fits before I do the straight part, because in her instructions, it's meant for either a DK weight yarn or a sock plus mohair. Since this is just sport weight, I might have to do more increases. However, because I prefer my hats tighter, I wonder if I will do the same amount of increases because ribbing is so stretchy. See, I'm just thinking all these things out loud. I actually did start looking on Wool & Company for a neon yellow mohair to match with it. But number one, I wanted to cast it on right then and there. Once I realized I needed to stop being so protective of this yarn and just use it, I could be dead tomorrow. Literally, I could be hit by a bus tomorrow. And then I would never have gotten the joy in this lifetime of using this yarn. I am going to use this yarn. But the reason I also decided I didn't want to wait, and number two, I felt like using another neon yellow mohair was going to erase some of the beauty of this particular yarn. Bad Egg is one of those spin cycle yarns with much more muted variation. I've talked about this many times, but like a Ghost Ranch colorway, for instance, has so much variation in it that if you throw a mohair on top of it, that variation is still going to come through. Like I'm looking over there at my Traveler Shawl by Andrea Mowry that is in Ghost Ranch. There's everything from like a sky blue to a black to a pink in that yarn. This yarn, on the other hand, has neon and it has this grayish taupish color that it throws in, which is what I think makes it so special. It is neon, but then it has these really toned down contrast colors that just make it so much more elevated, in my opinion. So I'm hoping it keeps me, because of that variation, it keeps me looking like a crossing guard. Like, yes, fifth graders cross the street now, because this color could read very crossing guard. I don't really care. I still want it. I'm going to wear it all the time. And my deepest hope is that I'm not disappointed, because I was thinking, like, is it going to fall into the same category as the ranunculus? Like the original was my favorite. And then the second one is going to, by just nature, by its very nature of being different, is it going to be disappointing? I really hope not. That would be such a bummer, considering how much I love this yarn and how much I love this pattern. We will find out, my friends. I'm actually going to Dallas next weekend. My husband and I are going to Dallas for literally less than 24 hours because it is my sister-in-law's 50th birthday. And she's having a dinner celebration, and my kids, they don't need to come. They've got so much going on. So they're going to stay at friends' houses, and he and I are going to go to Dallas for one day. So this is going to be my knitting project on the way. So I anticipate being able to knit a decent amount of this. This is like a fantastic project now. It's like I take it on the go. I think the other nice thing is the increases are very predictable. So once you get the hang of what the increases are, you don't need to keep looking at the pattern. Like, you know what kind of increases, you know where they go. It's very memorizable, easy to memorize. So that is where we are right now. Again, because it is a different yarn, I just want to be very mindful of making sure as it's approaching the correct width that I keep trying it on so that it fits as well as it possibly can. I want to make sure I take the time to do that, because like I said, I would be so disappointed if this turned out not as I hope it does. So, all right, y'all, that is all the knitting content I have. I appreciate your understanding and flexibility as I try to figure out my life and how all the pieces fit together with this new thing that I'm doing. Like, I'm back in school. I was thinking the other day, as I felt exhausted and overwhelmed and just constantly like running, how grateful I am to have my life so full of things that I love that I don't want to give anything up. And that is, I recognize what a privilege that is and what good fortune that is. So I definitely don't want to sound like I'm complaining. It is just logistically challenging as it's so new. So I am starving. Like my stomach is literally growling. And instead of chit chatting about life and other stuff, also, I just really don't have very much about life. My life has been chaos. I haven't had much time to sit and reflect and watch new shows or read books. I barely am doing any of that. So I will leave you today with only knitting content in hopes that next week we'll have extra life content to share. Please be well. Take care of yourselves. If this has been a rough week for you in any way, give yourself some extra grace. Give yourself the things you need. You deserve it. You don't need to be stressed out all the time in order to feel like you are participating in the world. The world is stressful, but there are parts of your life that are not, that give you joy, whether it's your relationships or your knitting or exercise or whatever it is, reading that makes you happy. You have to double down on those things. You don't owe the world stress. You owe the world engagement at the same time as you are actually living your life. Do you know what I mean? Like you're living your life, you're doing the things to take care of you and your family. And if you're happy, be happy. Don't feel guilty about being happy. Be happy. And then when you feel like you're able to confront the world with having enough resources and rest, then you can confront the world. Okay. That's my little end spiel for this episode of Another Knitting Pod. Please subscribe if you are new here. Thank you for spending some time with me. I will be back next Friday. See you then. Bye.